Hello again, and welcome to part 2 of the mini-series entitled How to Be a Better DM. As always, I am your kind and merciful Dungeon Master, Mr. Ralph. For those of you who are returning, welcome. As discussed last week, we will be going over how to build a starting quest and how to get your players involved in that quest. We'll go over a few other things as well, but that's going to be the main premise this week. For those of you who are watching this video and have not heard of the previous, go watch the other one. It has the same title except it doesn't say episode 2. Pretty self-explanatory. So, you may notice that I'm doing this video a little differently. We'll be doing some screen sharing, just very little, so that you guys can see. I have a notepad ready to go, and I'll be typing on it, giving you some examples. So, without further ado, let us begin. So at this point, you should have 3 things. You should have at least a digital copy of the monster manual. Well, why do I need that? Well, because it has a list of all the monsters that's needed. You should also have a premise for your adventure. What you want it to be, how far do you want it to go, what level do you want it to go up to. Next thing you should have is the idea for the starting quest. So you should have all 3 of these things. You should also have seen how to be a better dungeon master. TM. Now, we have all these things. What are we going to do with them? Well, we're going to make our starting quest. How am I going to do that? Well, let's see. Let's pick a premise just to get us started. Say the premise is you want your characters to be heroes, so heroic characters. I misspelled characters. Sorry about that. Heroes of the realm. Let's call it that. And let's say that you've chosen your realm to be Faerun. Alright. Well, what do I need now? Okay, so we want to basically take our characters and introduce them into public view. So how are we going to do that? Well, a very common thing in most cities is a quest board. What is a quest board? If I can spell it right. A quest board is basically, the best way to put it is it's kind of like one of those court boards that you see up hanging, and they have various flyers for renting a room, guitar lessons, save on your electricity, just all the flyers hanging around, just advertisements. Well, that's what a quest board is. People go up and they pin requests for heroes or adventurers. And people can go up, take a tag, or pull the flyer, find the person who posted it, and start their adventure. So we got the quest board. Let's say that's what we're going to use. So let's put advertisement for quests. So at this point, you can have the characters look at the boards. And how would we accomplish that? Let's see. And I'm basically just going to say this as if I am a DM. If I'm DMing, I'm running a game. You find yourself on a boat. Actually, no, that's horrible. let's rewind a little bit. Control Z. You have your characters introduce themselves to each other. That's important. The characters have to know each other. Okay, and main reason for that is they have to know each other's class. They have to know their races. For example, dwarves and elves do not get along. So if you have a dwarf and an elf in the party, you kind of want them to know that because it can add to the role-playing value. So first of all, have your characters introduce each other. Now, before the quest does start, you're going to have to come up with how did they all meet. That's very important because you can't just kind of have them randomly bump into each other. Okay, and there's no explanation, or just they show up together, and there's no explanation on how they got together. That makes for bad RP. Believe me, I've done it. I've seen it. You don't want to do it. Now, let's say in this example, they come from different lands, different realms, and they each have their own reasons for trying to become an adventurer, which they can make up on their own. You don't have to worry about that. And wanting to become an adventurer, they decided to set out for one of the most common cities where many heroic and legendary adventurers were made. Since we're in Faerun, we're going to say that's Neverwinter. A very big city on the Sword Coast, very popular, very big populace, always in trouble, always needing rescuing. Very easy place to start out your adventure. So and luckily it is on the Sword Coast, so kudos there. So you could say they all boarded a cargo ship, hoping to find adventure in foreign lands. The cargo ship stopped at different ports. At each port, one of the players got on. And you can roleplay that however you want. So now they're all on the ship. At this point, they have introduced themselves. The ship docks at Faerun, and this is where we will pick up as a DM. The ship you're on docks in the lands of Faerun in the city of Waterdeep. As you disembark the ship, you speak to a few locals, try to get a few rumors, maybe where can one find work. Well, at this point, they can be directed to the quest board. You can call it whatever you want, but this is the basic premise. Everybody that you speak to directs you to a quest board, which is allocated just at the end of the dock before you reach the main city. As you approach the quest board, you see some require more experienced adventurers. Some of them even require legendary adventurers. But you see one or two that kind of catch your eye. They're basically simple tasks, not too much to worry about, and they seem to be a good starting point. One of them, however, does require, and this is where you would name a race that is not in their party. For example, they have a tiefling, an elf, a human, and a dwarf. Oh, well, this quest requires a halfling, so you can't do it. Direct them to the other quest line. Don't just say, no, you can't take it. Give them a reason. They have to have a reason for being pushed in this direction, otherwise it'll feel forced. At this point, you can say, as you read this request, it says, this is what's important, because this is how they're going to get introduced to the main quest line. So, how do you hook them? Every adventure, every quest, every campaign needs a hook. And you can look through the player's handbook, you can look through the Dungeon Master's Guide, this will be in both of them. You need a hook. So what is a hook? Well, a hook is a driving reason, or a driving force, let's just say reason, for the adventurers or party to complete the quest. It's even a driving force for them to even take the quest in the first place. Okay? So, what do I do from here? Or how do I make a good hook? Every good hook has one thing. Treasure. Lots of treasure. So what is treasure? Well, treasure equals gold. It equals equipment. It equals renown. Treasure can be so many different things. Payment for completion of a quest is usually a good hook, especially for characters who are starting out. They have very minimal gold. They can't do a whole lot of shopping. But it's not all you can put in there. You can have all three of these things as your hook. So what's going to be our hook? Let's say on the pamphlet, on the flyer that they pull off the quest board, it says, needed, group of adventurers to reclaim stolen cask of dwarven ale, willing to pay money for its return. Well, there you go. That's a hook. We do this, just retrieve a stolen cask of ale. Hey, we get paid for that? Sweet. Maybe we can get a few free drinks. We're not there yet. Let them think it. Now, on the flyer, you will also have the name of the person they need to contact. So on the flyer, it would say, contact Wisera at the Drunken Sailor Inn. Well, now we don't know what that is. The players have never been to Faerun. They have never been to Waterdeep. They have no idea what it is. So, what do? This is where the rolling comes into play. You have them roll dice and add some skills. For this particular check, it would be streetwise or intelligence. Wisdom could also help here. Maybe some diplomacy if they want to ask some civilians who are working at the docks. You could do any number of checks. But let's just make this a generic check. Let's say they have to make an intelligence check to find the right people to talk to ask about where it is. So what should the check be? This is a very, very important part of the game. What should your check be? And I'm going to tell you how to determine that. By how well known the information will be. For example, the location of the Drunken Sailor. It's a very, very common place. A lot of people know about it. They know where it is. So this is not going to be a very difficult check. DC 10 is usually moderate. DC 5 is easy. DC 15 is when you're getting into the harder, and then DC 20, 30, 40. Then you're talking about some truly, truly epic lore. Maybe the creation of a Dracolich. Who created, or where was this Dracolich created? What is the known lineage or heritage, or what kind of power does Dracolich have? Now you're talking in the DC 20, 30, 40, somewhere in there. But we're not there. This is a very easy check, very well-known place. So we're not going to make the check too hard. So at this point, what should our check be? Well, let's make it DC 10. Faerun's kind of a thieverish town or realm. Not too many people willing to help. So what is DC 10? Well, DC 10 is the medium. It's kind of the average. Average check. So how do I make that? Well, you determine the modifier that they need. For this example, we're going to do int. So they roll 1d20 plus intelligence modifier. And then you take the result, and if it's higher or lower, they succeed or they fail. So, say the result is lower. That's a fail. Higher is a success. So let's say they succeeded on this check. So how would we do that? You find the right people to talk to, you find the right people to ask, and they point you in the direction of the drunken sailor. You find it relatively easy, and as you stand outside, you can hear a bit of ruckus going on inside. Stop there, because as you remember, when we discussed last week, you don't roleplay for the characters. So at this point, one of your characters will probably say, well, we'll go inside. Okay. As you enter the drunken sailor, oh my god, what do I do next? Well, as any good DM will tell you, you should know your area. Or let's say town. Know the bars, the taverns, the inns, know them. So for this example, we're using the Drunken Sailor. The Drunken Sailor is a very common meeting or gathering ground for those who have just come in off of ships. Any kind of lore, not just Dungeons and Dragons, but any kind of lore will tell you that the sailors of yesteryear were not the kindest, easiest bunch to get along with. So let's say this. You walk into the tavern. As you part the doors and enter, you see that there is a bit of a fight going on. A couple of sailors are on the floor, and they're rolling and tumbling and kind of fighting it out while their buddies cheer them on. At the back of the tavern. Now, why did I say at the back of the tavern? I was describing the ruckus. Well, you don't want to go too much into detail. Going too much into detail will slow up the game. You don't want to do that. Now, if they want to check, okay, well, can I look to see if I recognize any of the sailors? Then you can stop what you're doing and you can allow them to do that. Okay, that's a little bit more of a complicated check, but we're going to leave that for later. So let's continue. You look at the back of the bar and you see, or the tavern. Let me use the correct vernacular. You look to the back of the tavern and you see that there is a bar. There seem to be several glasses lined up. Perhaps a few of them were being tended to by these sailors. There also seems to be a maid behind the bar. She is currently cleaning glasses, and she seems unperturbed by the ruckus going on, as though she's kind of used to it. Now let me stop there. You notice I use the word perturbed. It's kind of a good rule for a DM to use the bigger words. You don't want to just say, she doesn't seem to care. The reason you want to use bigger words is because that's going to give your players the perception. No, that's not the right word. That's going to give your players the idea that you know what you're talking about. You're a little bit smarter than they would initially think. That sounds bad, but it's true. So, let us continue. So at this point, they have seen Wisera. You've pointed her out to them, and they know that she's the person they need to talk to. Let them decide to go to talk to her. Some of them may want to get involved in the fight, and that's perfectly fine. Now, the reason we're stopping here is because of what I just said. Some of them may want to get involved in the fight. This is another part of hashing out your starting quest. Getting encounters together. That's a very important part, because otherwise you just got a bunch of guys walking around. They're not doing anything. They're making checks, they're finding stuff, but that's not fun. You need combat. Encounters equals combat. So you need them. So at this point, your character's level 1. These are sailors. They've sailed the seas. They're pretty experienced. So if they want to get into a fight with them, then you would start the encounter. Now, how do you build this encounter? I'm going to tell you right now that any human you see in the monster manual is not going to be at first level. First level is always going to be your basic monsters. Goblins, maybe some kobolds, no humans. So what you're going to have to do is, and this is another part of being a good DM, what you're going to have to do is level down these creatures, or these combatants. How do I do that? Well, this is where your knowledge of character creation comes into play. You don't need to completely recreate a human character. You can use what's in the monster manual, but level them down. And the reason I say this is why your character creation comes into play is because you're going to need to know what their stats should be at each level. Now, every monster manual, doesn't matter what edition you're playing with, they will include kind of a rough walkthrough, kind of a brief little walkthrough on how to level down a monster. So go ahead and read through that. I'm not going to get into too much detail because that is available. But I'll basically just tell you, you need to lower their modifiers, you need to lower their checks, their skills, their proficiency bonuses sometimes. You're going to need to lower these things. Because at level 1, a bunch of level 5 sailors are going to clean your party up with no problem. Especially in 5th edition. In 5th edition, at level 1, your party has minimal hit points. So you're going to want to adjust that. Now that you've appropriately leveled down the sailors, and they're of appropriate challenge for our party, we're going to start the encounter. And you start the encounter by saying 2 words. And your players will need to know these words because these are important. Roll initiative. Now, if you've played before and you followed my instructions and you're watching this video after you've played some games, you know what initiative is. So why am I going over this? Well, it's because as a DM, you're not just keeping initiative for your character. You're keeping initiative for all the enemies. So what you have to do is make a decision. Do you want to have each individual combatant have an initiative? Or do you want to just roll 1 initiative for all of them? This is what I do. And I don't do it. Every monster has 1 initiative. Every type of creature has 1 initiative. Each member of the party will have their own, and you'll track that later. But say, for example, you have a group of goblins, you have a group of wolves, and you have a group of kobolds. Well, the group of kobolds will have 1 initiative. So when their initiative rolls around, all the kobolds will go at the same time. On the wolves' turn, they will all go at the same time. So now you kind of get what the gist of what I mean. Another kind of popular scenario is having each character roll a d20. Whoever gets the highest starts, and then play presumes to the left or the right. And when it comes to you, all of the monsters go at once. That's a little rough on the players. I've found it to be, because they are all getting attacked at the same time by all of these creatures. They're all going to take some massive damage. So my suggestion at this point is do not go with each monster having their own initiative. You're going to drive yourself nuts trying to keep track of all of this. And if this is your first time as a DM, it's not worth it. The method I would suggest is have each group of enemies have their own initiative. Have the artillery go on 1 initiative, have the brutes go on another, kind of that deal. So everybody's got initiative now. Play out the encounter. Encounters are pretty simple. All you have to do is, as a DM, follow the tactics. Each monster has a tactic. What do I mean by tactic? Well, they have a way they behave. For example, a human sailor, they're kind of a brutish thug. They don't have too much tactical sense. So they're pretty much just going to bang on whoever they think is the toughest. They don't really care too much that the wizard's over there, beating them with magic missiles. They really just care that this fighter here is really big and he's really tough. I need to take him down first. That's really what they're going to think of. However, that's not the only type of monster. Now, say you've got a leader in the group, a tactician, a commander, however you want to say it. That person is going to have a little bit more tactical knowledge. Not only will they have more tactical knowledge, but they'll be able to direct the other enemies to attack certain players. So you have to take that into consideration. If you have a leader, they're going to know, okay, the cleric's going to be healing all the damage we're doing, and the wizard's just going to be beating us from a distance. So I should probably focus on those 2 guys pretty heavily. And you can then have the leader direct the dumb brutes to attack certain people. And they will, because they follow orders. That's really the key to throwing together a good encounter. If you just throw one type of enemy at these players, it's going to get real boring real fast. Mix it up. Throw in some artillery, throw in some leaders, have them be smarter. Okay? So you've played through your encounter. So let's assume the players won. Award them their experience. Don't make them wait. A lot of DMs will tell you once they hit an extended rest, give them their experience and let them level up. That is total BS. Everybody has played RPGs before, and 9 times out of 10, the player characters at your table will have played a digital RPG before. When you get a certain level of experience, you get that experience when you kill an enemy, and once you reach that level, you don't wait until you save the game to level up. You level up right there. So let them do that. So we've now played through our encounter. Let's assume we've leveled up 1 level, and the characters have done that. What's next? Well, let them decide. Do they want to go talk to Wisera and start this quest? You're going to kind of want to guide them in that direction. So let's assume that they don't want to talk to her outright. They want to ask around the bar, try to find, some other work. Okay, let them do that. Don't tell them no, the only person, no, don't do that. Don't tell them no. No's a bad word. What you want to do is direct them. Say they go up, say, okay, well, you see the sailors. They're kind of giving you the stink eye now because you beat up on their friends. But you see other patrons. There's an older gentleman sitting in the corner nursing a tankard of ale. You see a couple of nobles sitting in a booth. They're eating, make up some food, and drinking what appears to be mead. Well, now they have people to talk to. So say they want to go talk to the old guy, and they want to ask him, have you heard of any work needing to be done? He says, well, all I've heard of is that Miss Wisera over there needs some help. You might want to talk to her. So at this point, they can go talk to the other characters that you've listed, or you can further direct them. Wisera overheard them asking him that, and she speaks up. I'm sorry, are you guys looking for work? She has now engaged the characters. The character have an obligation to respond. Let's say they say yes. Well, I happen to have a task needing to be done, and unfortunately, I am not up to I do not have enough skill to complete it myself. At which point, she will begin to tell them about the quest. Congratulations, you have just introduced them to your quest line. Okay? At this point, what's happened is they now know what needs to be done. And that's a good thing. Why is that a good thing? Well, for one reason. Without direction, the game will go nowhere. The game needs direction. Pure and simple. So, this is pretty much where we'll call it a day here. The reason I'm saying that is because I don't want to overload you. I've introduced you to encounters, starting to build encounters, and I've introduced you on how to get your characters engaged in your main quest line. Now, the quest line we chosen here is not so much a main storyline. It's not so much that. It's kind of just a hodgepodge of various quests that you can throw at them. And it's a really good one. It's a really good premise for starting out DM, because you don't have to focus. You don't have to remember, okay, I've had them do this. I need to do this to have them continue to reach the end of the story. You don't have to do that. You can just say, okay, what am I going to throw at them this week? So it's a really good starting place. We've also gone over a little bit on how to determine checks. Again, just kind of go over that once more briefly. At first level, you don't want to make your checks too hard. Their modifiers are going to be low. They're not going to be able to meet them. So make your checks minimal. We've also gone over how to guide your players a little bit. Guiding them is actually very, very easy. I mean, there are literally dozens of methods for doing this. You just have to find one that works for you. So, with that, we will call it a day. In our next portion, we will cover actually the players actually going on the quest, completing the quest, how to determine what kind of treasure they're going to get, how to determine how much gold they're going to find. We'll go over all of that in the next broadcast. So until then, take it easy, roll well, and I'll see you guys later.